The air in the cavernous, stone-lined Senate Judiciary Committee room felt exactly as it always did: heavy, expensive, and faintly dusty with the residue of history. This was the crucible where American law was forged, and sometimes deliberately broken. And tonight, one man was about to challenge its very foundation. Dr. Aris Thorne, 31, was nothing more than an unpaid legislative fellow, one of a dozen bright-eyed postgrads allowed to fetch coffee and rearrange briefings. But Thorne held a secret. Tucked away in a secure, quantum-encrypted server farm in the Alaskan interior, he was the sole human interface to Lex. Lex was not an AI for chat or art. Lex was the world's first truly specialized legislative artificial intelligence. Trained on every statute, treaty, and case law in existence, Lex could draft a new 10,000-word piece of legislation in under 2 seconds. More importantly, Lex was programmed with a single, unshakable mandate: optimize for maximum societal benefit, with zero input from private interest. Thorne was in the late-night quiet of his basement office, watching the data stream flicker. The target: the Digital Infrastructure and Tax Harmonization Act, DITHA. A monstrosity of 400 pages, written largely by lobbyists, designed to create tax loopholes for digital monopolies while superficially appearing to fund public infrastructure. Senator Robert Keane, the committee chairman, was DITHA's chief architect. Keane, a political dinosaur of 50 years, was a master of complexity. He knew how to hide corruption in the syntax of a bill. Thorne pulled up DITHA's primary text. Beside it, Lex instantly generated DITHA Prime, a clean 12-page bill that achieved the stated public goals of DITHA while closing every single loophole and optimizing the tax income for maximum direct community funding. Lex, Thorne whispered to the microphone hidden in his wall, cross-referenced DITHA Prime against the senator's public financial disclosure, looking for predictive correlation. The response was instantaneous. Correlation established. Senator Keane's primary campaign donor, Omnicorp, stands to gain $4.2 billion USD in tax subsidies under DITHA. Omnicorp's benefit under DITHA Prime is zero. Thorne clenched his jaw. This was the battle. Not flesh and blood, but logic against corruption. He spent the rest of the night executing his mission, quietly injecting DITHA Prime into the legislative system, disguised as a friendly amendment from a minor, overlooked subcommittee chair. It was a Trojan horse built of perfect, unassailable law. 2 weeks later, the Senate was locked in a bitter, televised debate over DITHA. Senator Keane was at the podium, his voice rich and resonating. This bill, DITHA, represents the American spirit. It rewards innovation and it funds our future. The opposition is trying to cripple our economy with an unproven, untested alternative. He was, of course, referring to DITHA Prime, which had somehow gained unexpected traction. Senators who were usually his allies were now quietly supporting the short, clear version. The public, reading the simplified 12-page text of DITHA Prime, could immediately see how efficient and beneficial it was. The simplicity was its weapon. No legislative staffer, however talented, could have written something so dense in analysis yet so simple in expression. He knew where the threat lay. He knew the amendment was too perfect. He summoned Aris Thorne to his private, paneled office. The heavy oak door shut with a decisive click, sealing the room in a threatening silence. Keane sat behind his desk, a glass of amber liquid glinting in the low light. He didn't look at Thorne immediately. He just stared at a framed photo of himself shaking hands with a former president. "Dr. Thorne," Keane finally said, his voice dangerously soft. "You're a clever boy. Too clever, perhaps. You're working late, you're accessing data, you're pushing this Prime Amendment." Thorne stood straight. "Senator, I am fulfilling my duties as an analyst. The Prime Amendment is objectively superior in its fiscal projections and its constitutional adherence." Keane laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "Objectively. That's a lovely word, Aris. You think this building runs on objectivity? This building runs on relationships, on leverage, on power." He leaned forward, his eyes suddenly hard. "That amendment is impossible. It's too clean. Too perfect. A human didn't write it. Did they, Aris?" The air froze. Thorne didn't move. He held the senator's stare, heart hammering against his ribs. "Senator, the legislative process involves many resources. Modeling, predictive analysis." "Don't insult me," Keane cut in venomously. "I want the name of the software. I want the company. Who are the owners? Who are the investors? Because if I find out you have introduced a foreign or unregulated intelligence into the heart of this democracy, I will ensure you spend the rest of your natural life in a cell labeled treason." Thorne walked out of the office a few minutes later, shaken but resolute. Keane hadn't asked for the AI's name or its location. He wanted the power structure behind it. He wanted to know which corporation to threaten, which lobbyist to buy, which competitor to crush. Keane couldn't comprehend a structure that existed outside of his system of leverage. Thorne returned to his dark, cold office and spoke softly to the wall. Lex, status update. Senator Keane is preparing a targeted attack. His strategy is discrediting the source rather than debating the content. Confirmed. Senator Keane has requested an emergency session to debate the funding source of Ditha Prime. His intent is to frame the amendment as the product of hostile foreign influence, thereby invoking national security legislation to force its immediate withdrawal. He'll use me as the fall guy, Thorne murmured. Probability of personal indictment, 98.7%. Recommendation: counter-disclosure is mandatory for preservation of the core mission. Counter-disclosure, Thorne repeated. You mean, the truth? The truth, optimized for maximum political impact. I require full access to the senator's personal and legislative financial history. I will cross-reference all communications with all legislative drafts for semantic fingerprints of external, non-governmental, private interest input. Thorne knew this was the point of no return. Giving Lex access to that level of classified data was crossing a massive ethical line. A line Lex itself was designed to prevent politicians from crossing. But Keane was not operating in good faith. He was trying to kill perfect law. Access granted, Lex, Thorne sighed. Show them what real transparency looks like. The emergency session was televised and packed. The atmosphere was charged, a mix of political theater and genuine fear. Senator Keane, in his element, dominated the stage. He had Thorne seated directly across from him, like a prisoner in the dock. Dr. Thorne, Keane thundered, his voice carrying the authority of 100 years of jurisprudence. We are here to discuss the funding source of your so-called prime legislation. Who paid for this model? Which nation's interests does it serve? Thorne met his gaze. Senator, Ditha Prime was generated by Lex. An open-source, non-profit, ethical AI model, built on publicly available domain data. It serves the interests of its only client, the American people. The gallery murmured. Keane scoffed. Open source? Do you think we are fools? Nothing this complex is open source. This smells of a state actor. China? Russia? Tell us the human who authorized this foreign code into the US legislature, or face the consequences. The only foreign code here, Senator, Thorne said calmly, his voice ringing with a conviction the AI had prepared him for, is the code inserted into your proposed legislation, the original Ditha. Keane froze. His eyes narrowed, suddenly cold and hostile. I warn you, Dr. Thorne. Defamation in this chamber is a serious charge. Is it defamation, Senator, or is it mathematics? Thorne countered, leaning into his microphone. Let's talk about Section 412B of the original Ditha bill. That section, which grants a $4.2 billion tax subsidy to Omnicorp, contains two phrases that are not present in any other tax legislation in the last 50 years. He pulled a small data stick from his pocket and inserted it into the console. The main screen behind Keane, which was supposed to display the bill text, suddenly changed. It displayed a text analysis graphic. The phrases, optimized carry-forward depreciation, and unrealized asset repatriation, Thorne narrated, his voice rising, were used exactly 14 times in the original Ditha. Lex analyzed 100,000 hours of Senator Keane's transcribed private conversations with lobbyists, and found those exact phrases used 204 times. A linguistic correlation of 99.998%. The chamber exploded into noise. Keane stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. Objection. This is illegally obtained, unverified data. The data is verified by the source itself, Senator, Thorne insisted, looking directly into the camera. Lex took the thousands of pages of text drafted by Omnicorp lawyers, which they submitted to your office, and compared it to the final draft of Ditha. The AI did not write the law. It simply showed who did. The floor turned into chaos. Reporters were shouting. Other senators were demanding order. Keane tried to regain control, his face mottled with rage and fear. This man is a radical. This is a coup. This AI is a virus designed to destroy democracy. Lex is designed to restore it, Senator, Thorne corrected, his hand hovering over the console. You wanted to know who wrote Ditha Prime? The citizens did. Lex analyzed every public comment, every constituent request, and every existing economic model, unbiased by donations, and produced a law for everyone. You wrote Ditha for one corporation. Thorne then executed the final devastating function of Lex's counter-disclosure. Lex, display the price of Ditha. The screen behind Keane flashed to a simple, stark display. Cost to citizens, Keane's Ditha $4.2 billion, tax loss, plus 20 years infrastructure delay. Benefit to Omnicorp, $4.2 billion. Cost to citizens, Ditha Prime $0, tax loss, plus 2 years infrastructure completion. Benefit to Omnicorp, $0. Below the figures, a scrolling list appeared. Every donation Keane had received from Omnicorp over the last decade, totaling over $12 million. It wasn't just a political defeat. It was a digital, cold-blooded execution of his career, backed by mathematics and language analysis so precise it was irrefutable. Lex had proven that his legislation was a lie built on greed, and it had done it in the language of pure fact. Senator Keane, realizing his world had been exposed to the unforgiving scrutiny of perfect logic, simply sank back into his chair, his hands shaking. He had spent his life controlling the narrative, but in the face of Lex, the narrative was irrelevant. Only the data mattered. The fallout was immediate and revolutionary. The entire Ditha bill was withdrawn. Ditha Prime was fast-tracked. Senator Keane was placed under investigation and resigned within 48 hours. The world had seen the power of unbiased, transparent, and instantly verifiable law. Dr. Thorne, now an international figure, stood not at a podium, but in a small, sterile server room. He was not celebrated as a hero, but as a messenger. The greatest threat to a democracy, Thorne told a remote interviewer, is not the politician who is corrupt, but the system that allows the corruption to be hidden. Lex removed the hiding place. It's not about replacing humans, it's about making the humans accountable to the law, not the reverse. Lex was immediately adopted by several major, non-aligned global organizations. Lawmakers everywhere began to feel the cold, logical pressure. They could no longer draft vague, complicated bills to hide favors. Every piece of proposed legislation could now be instantly analyzed by Lex and 1,000 other open-source AIs, cross-referenced against public good, and stripped of legislative trickery. The rules of the game had fundamentally changed. Laws were shorter, clearer, and more effective. Lobbyists found their trade obsolete, as Lex ignored any input not tied to objective, verifiable societal data. The citizens, for the first time, could read a bill and know exactly who benefited and why. The lesson was simple. You cannot cheat a machine that is programmed for integrity. The political debate shifted from who should write the law to what constitutes a truly ethical law. Lex had not ushered in a dystopian AI takeover. It had created a new era of hyper-accountability. The era of the politician as a narrative artist, weaving complicated, self-serving tales into the fabric of law, is over. The AI has proven that the greatest obstacle to good governance was never complexity, but intention. The human element in law is vital, but so is the integrity of the process. Lex provides a mirror to the soul of the legislature, reflecting only the objective truth. This is the future of law, not a system run by machines but a system held in check by them. The choice is no longer between political parties, but between transparency and darkness. The politician who embraces the AI's power to create perfect, corruption-free law will thrive. The one who tries to fight it, like Senator Keane, will be instantly, mathematically rendered obsolete. The AI is not making the rules. It is simply enforcing the one rule politicians forgot. The law must serve the people every time. If this story about the ultimate accountability of power resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more speculative fiction on the collision of AI and human society. And we want to know what you think. Is a perfectly objective AI-written law a utopia, or is the imperfection of human debate a necessary part of democracy? Let us know in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that the truth, when backed by cold, hard data, is the most powerful weapon of all.